The descendants of Noah and the Tower of Babel. Chapter 10, the descendants of Noah. After the flood, Shem, Ham, and Japheth had many descendants, the descendants of Japheth. Japheth's descendants had their own languages, tribes, and land. They were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. Gomer was the ancestor of Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. Javan was the ancestor of Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim, who settled along the coast. The descendants of Ham. Ham's descendants had their own languages, tribes, and land. They were Ethiopia, Egypt, Put, and Canaan, Cush. Was the ancestor of Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Rama, and Sabteka. Rama was the ancestor of Sheba and Dedan. Cushi was also the ancestor of Nimrod, a mighty warrior whose strength came from the Lord. Nimrod is the reason for the saying, "You hunt like Nimrod with the strength of the Lord." Nimrod first ruled in Babylon, Erech, and Akkad, all of which were in Babylonia. From there, Nimrod went to Assyria and built the great city of Nineveh. He also built Rehoboth-ir and Kala, as well as Resen, which is between Nineveh and Kala. Egypt was the ancestor of Ludim, Anamim, Lehabim, Naphtuhim, Pathruzim, Kasluhim, and Kaphtorim, the ancestor of the Philistines. Canaan's sons were Sidon and Heth. He was also the ancestor of the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, the Arkites, the Sinaites, the Arvadites, the Zemarites, and the Hamathites. Later, the Canaanites spread from the territory of Sidon and went as far as Gaza in the direction of Gerar. They also went as far as Rasha in the direction of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim. Shem's descendants had their own languages, tribes, and land. He was the elder brother of Japheth and the ancestor of the tribes of Eber. Shem was the ancestor of Elam, Ashur, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. Aram was the ancestor of Uz, Hur, Gether, and Mash. Arphaxad was the father of Shelah and the grandfather of Eber, whose first son was named Peleg, because it was during his time that tribes divided up the earth. Eber's second son was Joktan. Joktan was the ancestor of Almodad, Shalef, Hazar-Maveth, Zerah, Hadoram, Uzal, Dikla, Obal, Abimael, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. Their land reached from Mesha in the direction of Shephar, the hill country in the east. This completes the list of Noah's descendants. After the flood, their descendants became nations and spread all over the world. Chapter 11, the Tower of Babel. At first, everyone spoke the same language, but after some of them moved from the east and settled in Babylonia, they said, "Let's build a city with a tower that reaches to the sky. We will use hard bricks and tar instead of stone and mortar. We'll become famous, and we won't be scattered all over the world." But when the Lord came down to look at the city and the tower, he said, "These people are working together because they all speak the same language. This is just the beginning. Soon they will be able to do anything they want. Come on, let's go down and confuse them by making them speak different languages. then they won't be able to understand each other. So the people had to stop building the city because the Lord confused their language and scattered them all over the earth. That's how the city of Babel got its name. The descendants of Shem, 2 years after the flood, when Shem was 100, he had a son named Arphaxad. He had more children and died at the age of 600. This is a list of his descendants. When Arphaxad was 35, he had a son named Shelah. Arphaxad had more children and died at the age of 438. When Shelah was 30, he had a son named Eber. Shelah had more children and died at the age of 433. When Eber was 34, he had a son named Peleg. Eber had more children and died at the age of 464. When Peleg was 30, he had a son named Reu. Peleg had more children and died at the age of 239. When Reu was 32, he had a son named Serug. Reu had more children and died at the age of 239. When Serug was 30, he had a son named Nahor. Serug had more children and died at the age of 230. When Nahor was 29, he had a son named Terah. Nahor had more children and died at the age of 148. The descendants of Terah. After Terah was 70 years old, he had 3 sons, Abram, Nahor, and Haran, who became the father of Lot. Terah's sons were born in the city of Ur in Chaldea, and Haran died there before the death of his father. The following is the story of Terah's descendants. Abram married Sarai, but she was not able to have any children. Nahor married Milcah, who was the daughter of Haran and the sister of Iscah. Terah decided to move from Ur to the land of Canaan. He took along Abram and Sarai and his grandson Lot, the son of Haran. But when they came to the city of Haran, they decided to settle there instead. Terah lived to be 205 years old and died in Haran. The Lord chooses Abraham. The Lord said to Abram, "Leave your country, your family, and your relatives, and go to the land that I will show you. I will bless you and make your descendants into a great nation. You will become famous and be a blessing to others. I will bless anyone who blesses you, but I will put a curse on anyone who puts a curse on you. Everyone on earth will be blessed because of you." Abram was 75 years old when the Lord told him to leave the city of Haran. He obeyed and left with his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all the possessions and slaves they had got while in Haran. When they came to the land of Canaan, Abram went as far as the secretary of Moreh in a place called Shechem. The Canaanites were still living in the land at that time, but the Lord appeared to Abram and promised, "I will give this land to your family forever." Abram then built an altar there for the Lord. Abram traveled to the hill country east of Bethel and camped between Bethel and Ai, where he built another altar and worshipped the Lord. Later, Abram started out towards the southern desert. Abram in Egypt. The crops failed and there was no food anywhere in the land. So Abram and his wife Sarai went to live in Egypt for a while. But just before they got there, he said, "Sarai, you are really beautiful. When the Egyptians see how lovely you are, they will murder me because I am your husband. But they won't kill you. Please save my life by saying that you are my sister." As soon as Abraham and Sarai arrived in Egypt, the Egyptians noticed how beautiful she was. The king's officials told him about her, and she was taken to his house. The king was good to Abraham because of Sarai, and Abraham was given sheep, cattle, donkeys, slaves, and camels. Because of Sarai, the Lord struck the king and everyone in his palace with terrible diseases. Finally, the king sent for Abraham and said to him, "What have you done to me? Why didn't you tell me Sarai was your wife? Why did you make me believe she was your sister? Now I've married her. Take her and go. She's your wife." So the king told his men to let Abraham and Sarai take their possessions and leave.